Stanley presents, oh, hey, that's me, The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. Excelsior. Welcome.
It's time for The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
Some of the greatest adventures of my life are sitting in this museum.
Big deal.
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Oh, your teacher.
Part-time.
Mr. Henry Jones, Jr. of Princeton, New Jersey.
I like Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
Now, what shall we talk about?
Welcome, IndyCast listeners and further fans. This is The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. I am Joe Stuber.
And I'm Keith Voss. Hey, Joe. It's our first IndyCast segment of 2023, the year of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's coming soon, man.
I guess.
We're almost there.
I don't know. I'm going to believe it when I see it because it's so weird because sometimes I go back and listen to our previous segments as we're preparing for other guests, which you'll see why in a little bit why I'm doing that. But it's like, I think one of them I went back to like 2015 or something, and it was like Indiana Jones, Ed's like Indiana Jones right at 5, right around the corner, and who was it? David kept working on the script, and I'm like, oh, we were so hopeful back then, weren't we?
We're
like
getting there.
Us young whippersnappers of 2015 were like, I'll believe it when I've purchased my ticket. I've got my big popcorn and my drink.
Sound like me now, though. Hold on. You sound like me. I was a doubter back in the day. Now I am full on because, I was just in the States. I went to go see Avatar. And
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Look, the warning's clearly on the package. That's on you.
The effects were fantastic. Story needed a little bit of work.
Really?
Anyway,
an Avatar movie had no story?
Dial of Destiny, the trailer played before, and it made it very, very real seeing that in IMAX.
Did they
3D.
fix some of the wonky effects? Or are they still a little wonky?
It's still a little wonky, but
okay.
I think they have more than enough time to work on that.
But bigger and louder, right?
Bigger, louder, and it really just sort of like, lit the fire under my chair there.
Okay.
to kind of like get me a little bit more excited than I've been. Like it finally woke me up. It was like a double shot of espresso that just like, oh, whoa, Indiana Jones is going to be here.
I guess you and I have flip-flopped on that because like you've always been like, they're never going to make it. I'm like, they're definitely going to make it. And then they're never going to make it. And I'm definitely they're going to make it. I'm like, oh, let's just get it here. But the cool thing is that whilst we're waiting for Indiana Jones 5, we get like all this like really great Harrison Ford work coming out. I don't know if you've caught any of it, like
1923.
Have you seen
Shrinking.
it? Yeah.
No,
okay.
I have not watched 1923 yet, but Shrinking is like
he's so funny in this.
He's amazing in it.
It's really good, but it's grumpy Harrison, but funny.
It's great. It's great. I absolutely love it. We're getting inundated with Harrison, which you know what, I'm fine with.
It's fine, and like we've always said, like when he's invested in a project, like when you watch him as Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back, really good. When you watch him as Han Solo in Return of the Jedi, he's kind of sleepwalking through it. So it's like we kind of get like this is a script. These are amazing script. These are amazing characters, and you get to see Harrison Ford on a horse, like really on a horse, not the CGI one from Indiana Jones 5. He's really on a horse, and he's in Montana.
But this is all going to be leading us into Indy 5, so hopefully that wave of energy keeps, it stays up there. It stays up, and we're going to ride it into Dial of Destiny.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when was the last time we had this much output from Harrison Ford and this much quality output? I mean, it's like...
Yeah,
it's
been a while.
I'm sorry if you've seen Firewall. It's like, we had a Harrison Ford movie.
Firewall, that's a pull.
There's a deep cut. I could go deeper. I could go deeper into Harrison Ford lore. But it's like you watch these things and you're like, I can't take my eyes off him. And it's like this is why he is the biggest star in the world. It's like this is why he was Indiana Jones and Han Solo and Rick Deckard and Jack Ryan and name it, right? Witness, and it's like. It's like the Harrison Ford Renaissance tour or something. I don't know. And he's doing like all these interviews, and every one of them he's knocking it out of the park because he's Grumpy Harrison. That's what we love, right?
That's exactly what we love. And speaking of, more Harrison, looks like we are also going to be adding to our list of commentaries with an upcoming Crystal Skull commentary.
Oh yeah, we got that coming up. What
15th anniversary
That's
is
impossible.
coming up. It's just kind of crazy.
That's impossible. 15 years for Crystal Skull. It seems like just yesterday we were taking the tour with Mitch. Right?
It
Mitch
was
is driving
just
us
yesterday,
around.
wasn't it? I don't know. We drank so much, it might have been just yesterday.
A lot of warm Crystal Skull vodka. I should have put that on ice. That's my bad, guys. I should have had the Crystal Skull.
Go back and look at those pictures, IndyCast listeners. You'll definitely see the after effects of drinking warm
Crystal Head, Triple Herkimer Diamond Filtered Newfoundland Deep Aquifer Pure Spirit Vodka.
out of the trunk of, was it Joe's car?
It was sitting there. We probably should have put on ice. Would have been a little bit better, but it was still good.
Memories,
still good. We
memories.
had, you could hear us. You know, I forget which issue we were reviewing, but go back and you can check it out on the IndyCast.
And maybe one of those, maybe the person that was with us on that segment might be joining us for the Crystal.
We will say that, yeah, we do have some guests coming in because you know last time we got together we did Last Crusade and we had Laird and Ron join us, so we might, you know, in Crystal Skull everybody joined Indy, right? So it's like, why?
Right, there was
the more
at least
the
6
merrier.
or 7 different additional characters. So you know
too
what, we're
many.
gonna do the same for our Crystal Skull
Sure,
commentary.
why
Nobody's
not?
gonna be able to say a thing without talking over the other one. It's gonna be chaos.
It'll be the
But
most
we're-
irritating thing you've ever heard, but it will be for the 15th anniversary of
how-
Crystal Skull.
Which is how some people feel about Crystal Skull. It's the
How-
most
look,
irritating, right? So
I
let's-
like this movie, but it is going to be a little challenging once we get to the jungle
It
scene.
is.
So anyway,
we're gonna, especially the quicksand scene. I know you and I are gonna.
it's not quicksand. It's
Whatever it is.
Whatever that was. I know. There's a whole
Clearly
explanation as
honest.
they're
All
dying.
right, no, we're not doing the commentary now.
No.
Stop,
We'll wait
stop,
for it.
stop.
Wait for it. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
So we'll have some special guests on that. That's going to be hopefully, don't hold us to this, but hopefully we're going to get it right around the 15th anniversary. I think that's going to be in May. May 22nd was I'm looking at my poster now. Let's target that date. Why not? Let's shoot for that date. So some special guests there. Special guest in the Raven's Nest today. We've got the writer of two Indiana Jones Adventures for Dark Horse Comics, Arms of Gold and Iron Phoenix. Lee Mars is our guest today. And Keith, we have talked about these tales previously on the IndyCast.
Yeah, we sure have. We talked about Arms of Gold on IndyCast 233. That was the 5th anniversary. That was our
5th anniversary, right?
Exactly. That was our
so
5th anniversary.
We're
We
so
did. I'm feeling it. Oh, my knees, my back,
years
and
of
in my
mileage
arms.
and all the things.
I'm feeling it in my arms.
Under
of
your theater
gold.
seat and warming your cockles and whatever.
We reviewed Arms of Gold in IndyCast 233, and then of course we reviewed Iron Phoenix in IndyCast 246. So go ahead and go back and re-listen to those. Listen to them again before you hear us jump into the Raven's Nest with Lee Mars.
Yeah,
Because
or
we're
just
gonna have a
listen,
good
or
time.
just listen to it now and then go back. But it's like we might have to
Exactly.
redo Iron Phoenix. I went back and listened to it. We were really
Were we
critical
too
of
hard?
the-
Was
maybe
that
a little.
Were we too hard on Iron Phoenix?
Little bit.
I
Well,
I don't know. Maybe
we'll talk about.
Yeah, maybe we were.
We'll talk about this, but it's based on a failed video game, so that'll play into it. But I think if you and I had maybe talked about it in that context, we did, but we might have been a little too critical. I don't know. It's not.
But I mean, you know, when you come from, same writer, you come from a story like Arms of Gold, you go to Iron Phoenix, you know, there definitely must something up there, and who knows, maybe we'll hear a little bit of background on that when we interview Lee.
Certainly going to chat with Lee about that today. Two totally different environments in which these tales were written.
Oh yes,
and so as a writer, it's we'll get into that. So again, as Keith mentioned, if you haven't checked those episodes out, be sure to do that. But right now, we do have a guest waiting at the VIP table in the Raven's Nest. Let us not keep her waiting. Time to head into the Raven's Nest, order a round of drinks, and chat with indie writer Lee Mars. And joining us now in the Raven's Nest is an Emmy-winning animator, cartoonist, and writer. Her comics work includes storytelling from underground comics to mainstream publishers DC, Marvel, and Dark Horse, where she penned adventures for our favorite archaeologist adventurer, Indiana Jones and the Arms of Gold, and Indiana Jones and the Iron Phoenix. A big welcome to Lee Mars. Lee, welcome to the IndyCast and the Raven's Nest.
Glad to be here.
Round of drinks. You're at the VIP table. What are you having? We would like to take maybe an order of wings, too. We can bring those in if you want them.
Wings of gold? Arms of gold? No, I don't know. We have wings of gold in the back for you.
There you go.
Delicious, I'm sure.
Whatever you want. You're here in the Raven's Nest, so we'll take good care of you. But look, before we get to talk about Indiana Jones, we want to get some background on you. How did you get into art and cartooning and writing and all these good things? Like, where did the interest spark for all this creativity?
Well, I started drawing when I was 2. And
you were getting paid for that, not professionally, right?
Well, actually, my first client was my dad.
Nice.
Nice. He was a doctor and needed slides and illustrations and stuff for things that he did at the time. So if I provided this artwork, I would get supper.
Oh, you got to eat. So you weren't a starving artist, actually.
Will work for food.
No. I was well supplied.
Did you have a sign on your bedroom door, will work for food for mom and dad? Is that how it worked?
I should have.
I guess that's good parenting. Let's see. So in college, you got to, is this right? You got to assist on High and Lois, Prince Valiant, Little Orphan Annie?
Yeah, I aim to be a political cartoonist. And so all of the schools that I attended, I was an Air Force brat, so we moved all around. All the schools I attended, I would end up doing cartoons for the school newspaper. And this was true in college as well. And by happenstance, I ended up rooming with Barbara Blaisdell, whose dad was Tex Blaisdell. And he was a background artist mostly for most all of the major comic strips at the time. They lived in New York, and so I was in college, and I arranged my schedule so I had Fridays off. So I would take the train up to New York. I was going to college in Washington, D.C. So I would take the train up to New York, draw all weekend, and then come back early Monday morning. And, I do this every 3 weeks or so. So that's how I got started.
What was your favorite part about working on like some of those books, like early on? Just not even necessarily getting into the political cartooning, but some of those, like major titles. Well,
it taught me to work fast and to come up with whatever shortcut I could manage. And it concentrated me on particularly pen and ink. I was an art major, so I did paintings and stuff like that. But the volume of work that I did in pen and ink sort of colored the rest of my work for the rest of my life.
You then made a move to California, right? And is that where you got into more like the underground comic scene and things like that?
Yeah. I struggled starting over in San Francisco. I eventually had a job as the retirement party cartoonist for Standard Oil of California. But on the side, I started Alternative Features Service, a feature service for college newspapers, underground newspapers, and some mainstream newspapers as well. And that's and working. We had our office right off Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, and so I ran into head shops, and that's when I ran into underground comics.
Okay. And is this also like Lee Marr's artwork? When did that come in?
About 5 years after that.
Okay.
I started Lee Marr's artwork.
Okay. Is that where you got the Emmy? Is that like where you were doing like commercial work and advertising?
Oddly enough, the first full job I had out of college was at WTOP TV, CBS in the nation's capital. So I was the graphic artist for the news department.
Okay.
And, yeah, and so there were the riots in Washington after Martin Luther King died, and we had film crews out there immediately, and so eventually they put it into a documentary called Dialogue with Whitey, and so so it needed. There were a lot of graphic things involved, and so that's where I got the Emmy.
Wow. A whole different world back then. I don't know. Could you even call something like that?
It was.
Oh, my goodness.
It was.
Interesting. So moved to the West Coast. Keith, I know there was a book from DC Comics back in the day. I don't know if you grooved on it, but I definitely do. Do you remember Plop Comics?
I don't remember Plop Comics
okay.
at all.
I remember Plop
I think that's
Comics.
a little bit before my time.
It's just a little bit. But Lee, could you tell us about Plop?
Well, from
the comic, of course.
Through Tex Blaisdell, I met Joe Orlando.
Yeah.
And he was an editor at DC. And although the books that he did were horror things, and I did a few horror things. Anyway, his dream was to do DC's version of Mad Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And this went through a lot of permutations, but eventually he began Plop, which at first had no ads. Ooh, amazing. So I was living out here on the West Coast. I visited New York a couple of times a year because I was doing illustrations for magazines and stuff like that. And I visited the the two comic companies each time I was back there. But for the most part, I lived in California. And so I was one of the first artists to live outside of New York who regularly got work in the comics. And so I started doing stories, mostly illustrating stories, but I wrote a couple of them for Plop, which was the name of the humor magazine. Joe Orlando, who was a really good guy, he knew all the comic writers and artists back, from the 40s even.
Yeah.
And so his old buddies, none of whom could write their way into or out of a paper bag, they would present these stories and he would buy them. And they weren't funny. So he would send them out to me. I would rewrite them and then illustrate them. It was a good gig for a couple of years.
Yeah. I think you did some work for Crazy too, and then there, I think, correct me if I'm...
Mad Magazine, like if DC had Plop, then Marvel had Crazy Magazine.
Crazy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Everybody was trying to, but they're all like satirical, and I think that kind of gets into the political cartooning too, right? Because you could kind of say things in those comics. It was almost like sort of a combo of underground meets mainstream, right? Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It was more mainstream than underground.
Yeah, not full on underground. Well, you've done that. There was the Further Fattening Adventures of Pudge Girl Blimp.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was that one of your favorites of all time?
Well, it seems to be a favorite of other people.
Yeah.
It was definitely a labor of love. It's come out.
Nominated for an Eisner Award, right, in 2017.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. got beat out by Jughead.
Well,
nothing like something
hard to beat a classic, I
humble.
guess.
Can you pick up an Archie comic without grumbling these days?
No,
I didn't think so. Years ago. What did you enjoy working on more, underground stuff or the mainstream stuff, or did you just enjoy for different reasons for both?
I enjoyed both. It was wonderful to get paid real money, of which the overgrounds provided.
Fair.
But the personal self-expression was wonderful as far as the undergrounds were concerned.
Was the Pudge, the comic that you did, was that sort of like, traveling to the West Coast? And I know there was a lot, I mean, definitely adult content there, but it was like, was that sort of like how you were seeing things at that point?
Yeah, there's a lot of political commentary in that, and I was deep into the feminist movement, and I expressed that as well. It's interesting. I originally, when I was developing the Pudge character, I had already learned from working on the comic strips that if you kept something as just a version of yourself, that was easier to do the long form. And so this is where a lot of the comic strips got into trouble, because the artists and writers would begin a strip reflecting on family life, and then they would get divorced, and then they couldn't do family life anymore.
Right.
So they had to, interrogate all of their friends and stuff. So
to get
the
stories.
easiest way to do this was to base it on yourself.
Okay.
And so originally, the Pudge character was going to be a version of myself, a kind of intellectual who did various adventures. But every time I would draw her, she would be this goofy little kid, and much younger than I had originally planned this to be. So finally, I just gave up and let her be who she wanted to be.
Yeah.
But all the stories in the issue, the 3 issues, were real stories, kind of altered.
For skewed for right. Did you have inspirations and influences growing up, like people that inspired you, for like political cartoonists or just cartoonists in general?
Yeah, I liked Beetle Bailey and anything that Joe Kubert ever did.
So was that Mort Walker on Beetle?
Mort Walker, that's right. It was Beetle Bailey. That's
right. And I really, but actually Joe Kubert was a real inspiration. As a little kid, of course, my mom totally bought into the comics are crap for kids. You shouldn't go near them. But I had a generous, sneaky grandmother. So every other weekend when I would spend the night with her, she would give me, this is taking me back, would give me an entire $1, and I could get 10 comics.
10 books.
Oh,
That's
yes.
right. That's right.
Yep.
Well, good thing Mom didn't read the underground stuff. She might have been on to something with a few.
Yeah. So I loved his work. So I got all these war comics, and my grandmother became concerned.
Okay. What have I given my $1 toward?
Right. But anyway, years later at DC Comics, I was up there, and there was this hunk of a guy standing at the windows looking out as though it were an ocean or something. And so I got introduced to Joe Kubert. And I had trouble not just licking him. He was.
Oh my God.
I was in such awe. He's a really nice guy. I got to know him quite well, and
probably good you didn't.
Out,
probably good you didn't do that though. See, you trusted your instincts.
That's a whole other character you could have created.
That
would have
that's
besides the point.
That would have been a whole other adventure tale.
Right.
Moving on. Were you an Indiana Jones fan prior to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Both of the movies and the comics.
Had you read the Marvel stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
That's kind of like what everybody did. Everybody read it a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's very rare to find a treatment of movies in comics that has the dynamism and the same kind of excitement, because the experience of comics is totally different from movies. And I can go in the other direction. I've seen plenty of graphic novels that are now movies that are great, but the other direction, not so much.
And I think that was the tricky thing too. Keith and I have talked about this a lot. Was in some of those Marvel books, some of them had to be tied up in an issue or two, and to get that epic sprawling.
Didn't have room to breathe for some of those stories, which is definitely something that Dark Horse was able to provide. They had longer storylines running over sometimes up to 8 issues, which is really fantastic. But yeah, that's really what the Marvel books suffered from, and it really could have. I think that series could have gone on much longer had the stories been able to breathe a little bit, develop some characters, develop some storylines. So unfortunately, that just didn't happen.
Yeah, well, the adventure story was not at the time a common thing that people created. The Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of brought that back.
Right.
And so to find people who can both write and draw adventure stories was pretty rare at the time.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to say that also, since it was something that was new, and obviously it was really in the really exploded. It was such a popular fan favorite movie. Like, who knew, like you said before, if it was going to even work in the comics?
Right.
So they really took a big chance on that series, on Further Adventures. So yeah.
So I had written Viking Glory for DC Comics. I don't know if you saw it. It was a hardback and all that.
That was in 1991, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an epic tale, and so that kind of adventure stuff is one of the reasons Diana contacted me to write the Indiana Jones.
Okay, so they reached out to you and said, "Can you get us an Indiana Jones story?"
Yeah.
Okay.
And I brought along Leo Durignona. He and I had met each other. We had the same agent. He was from Argentina, and I thought was just a terrific artist. He could do the epic, sweeping thing, and he could do the personal thing. And so I actually, of all of the comics that I ever worked on, other than my personal work, I was closest to the Indiana Jones character. I could make up Indiana Jones in my sleep. The stories just came out, all the possibilities. I based them all on Raiders of the Lost Ark, not getting into the other types of things. But his character just spoke to me in a way I could be Indiana Jones with total ease.
What was it about that? Because I know, especially maybe just even from a storytelling perspective, maybe this is because the character does lend itself toward the old movie serials. We talk about that, he's in peril every chapter, right? And it's almost like a comic book, especially a 4-issue arc. You probably have those beats that you can play off of just even ending an issue with him, something horrific happens, right?
On a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
course,
or a boat hanger, like he gets knocked off a boat.
He's dangling off something.
All the time.
All the time.
How did you come up with that? Because I'm looking, where Keith and I've got the books here. We're looking at the credits. Indiana Jones and the Arms of Gold, this is 1994, involved considerable research with the generous aid of longtime friends and new cohorts. And it's like, we got people from the Incan culture and National Geographic and archaeological references and the University of California, Spanish translations and customs. And how much research did you put in and how did you come up with this story?
Well, I came up with the story first. I had lived with a Peace Corps volunteer to Ecuador for 7 years. And so I wanted to go to South America because I had heard more than actually I ever wanted to about South America from Mao. And so, it going off of the formula, there is something that needs to be rescued or found, and there has to be some nefariousness going on around that. And I just built the story from there.
Keith, I think we've talked about this before. One of the things we love about this is that you kept that same creative team on the book throughout. Sometimes in these 4-issue arcs, a writer can't finish it or an artist can't finish it. You mentioned Leo.
On how the deadlines go, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's key.
Right.
And then also one thing that's unique to this book is you've got these translations. So like a ton of the book is in Spanish. And have you ever seen the book? Like, did they ever give you a copy?
Yes, I got sent some.
Okay. You got all the translations in the back. So you got, like, if you're like, I don't know what they're saying, just flip to the back and you can learn Spanish, right?
Right. Yes.
Who came up with that idea to just go, let's put a bunch of this in and then let's talk about it in the letters page?
Well, I talked with Diana about, it's not only Spanish, but also Quechua.
Yes.
And, so for the flow of it, we didn't want asterisks in every panel where anybody said hola. So Diana came up with putting it in the letters page.
That's such a cool idea too. And then
and Quechua, of course, Joe, just to step in quickly, Quechua too, don't forget, is something that definitely connects to one of the later Indiana Jones movies in Crystal Skull. He speaks Quechua.
But didn't he, that's what we were trying to think, because I think when we originally reviewed the book, I think we were trying to figure out, like, did he know it as young Indiana Jones? Was that like one of the young Indiana Jones episodes that maybe they didn't tap you on the shoulder with and mention that to you?
That's quite possible.
No.
Or was he like, because we kind of I think somebody's retconned this of like, well, maybe it was a different dialect of Quechua and maybe he was just faking not knowing or something like. Anyway, so didn't know if they told you about young Indiana Jones, but definitely Crystal Skull, which was like, 14 years later?
Right.
He knows it. So, and the one thing that's not translated, you have speaking of we're at the Raven's Nest, we're going to have, we'll have ballroom dancing later. But you've got Indiana Jones doing some ballroom dancing. Do you remember the song? Because it's not translated. They're like, you're on your own with this one, which we did Google it and figured it out. Do you remember what the song was that you wrote to?
No.
Okay. It's called Honeysuckle.
Oh, right.
All right. I didn't know if that meant anything to you or not, or if they just jammed that in there.
This was from Leo.
Okay.
I would ask him questions because, he's South American. He knows this stuff.
Right.
And so he says, he told me during the 30s, these were popular songs. And so I had a choice of popular songs. And even the songstress there was actually a popular songstress of the time. And so Leo provided a lot of the stuff that happened during that sequence.
Okay. I think when we reviewed this years ago, I think we played a snippet of the song too.
Yeah, we did.
We had that on there. Let's talk about some of these cool things in this. By the way, one of our favorite adventures. So we'll give you that going in.
Hands down.
Yeah, I think we have an early appearance, Keith, of Grumpy Indy. we have like Adventurous Indy, and then in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we definitely have Grumpy Indy. But I think this is one of those like fits in the middle there. Like this might be. Lee, did you intentionally make Grumpy Indy? Because he's kind of get off my lawn Indy in this one. He's definitely.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the things that I liked about Raiders of the Lost Ark was that he had an agenda. There were things that, that he wanted to happen and wanted to do. But there were all these people and instances coming up that he hadn't anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
Even Karen, what's her name?
Karen Allen.
Yes, was not, how she acted and her relationship to him was a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a lot of that in the story. I think that made him pissed off, so he was sort of grumpy.
Well, they take his class away from him, and then he meets this woman, great character in Francesca, and he ends up calling her a Latin lollipop. Do you remember that? Is that yours, or is that okay? Yeah, it's a great play between the two of them. Some of our favorite meetings, or some of our favorite moments. There are young Indy references. You talk about him being in the Great War, when he runs into Antoine, short-lived character,
yeah.
but he does
a brief appearance.
Yes. Spoiler alert for people on a 30-year-old book. Yeah, Antoine doesn't make it too far. But he talks about Verdun, later talks about Indian Houdini. So I know they were doing young Indiana Jones at the time. Like, were you encouraged to bring some of those things in, or did they give you some things to drop in? Okay.
Were you a fan of the TV show? Was that just stuff that you?
Oh yes,
had watched?
I loved. No,
the
loved
TV show is great.
Show.
Okay.
It was. Yeah.
So you were getting some of the in your writing that was influencing your writing. Actually, then was watching those episodes.
Probably unconscious. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of trouble with LucasArts. Dark Horse did. They oddly enough, and this might be one of the reasons that some of the issues were too late or interrupted or whatever, was because LucasArts licensing department had balked at something about the initial stories. And so they they decided that I should just deal with them directly, for scheduling purposes.
Mm.
And I can't remember her name, but she was the middle-aged lady who was in charge of licensing, and she didn't like comics.
Mm-hmm.
So we had initially conversations, but once she realized that there was a woman doing the writing, she kind of warmed up a little bit.
Lucy Wilson? Was it Lucy Wilson?
Yes.
All right.
Lucy Wilson.
I'm going through the Iron Phoenix. I'm skipping ahead, but all right, let's put some names on these folks. But she warmed up to you.
Yes.
All
yes.
right.
And so the only thing that she really balked with, and I had to send her to various sites to reinforce what I had in the story, was about the cocaine that Indy got, and
he drinks it at one point, doesn't he? There's like a coca drink.
Yeah. It's poured into him. He's not. Right. He doesn't want to drink it. But
they strip him down to his skivvies. They bury him in the snow, and they dump some cocaine down him. And then there's like then the end of chapter 3. And how will Indy get out of this one? Well,
coca to numb the pain, of course. Right. I mean, so
that's you had to kind of walk into that one then, right?
Yeah. But that was it as far as serious disagreements.
Okay. Well, you walked us into one of our favorite moments. This would be how does Indy get out of this? Well, of course, a llama saves him, right?
Yes.
One of the better Indiana Jones.
Yeah, Keith and I kind of thought.
Sidekicks, let's say.
Keith and I kind of thought at the time, okay, he needs to. He does get out of it. You read the book, you'll figure it out. But he's saved by a vision. Like a specter, a vision that tells an old man in the snow, and there's this beast that comes in that smells, but it keeps him warm. Were you referencing Empire Strikes Back?
No.
Oh, okay.
All right.
It's so out of Empire Strikes Back. It's like a tauntaun coming in, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they stink, but they're warm. All right. It felt like it.
I think one of the reasons why I really like Arms of Gold, besides it being a fantastic story, is there's a lot of like little. My favorite Indiana Jones movie is Temple of Doom. I don't know how you feel about the other Indiana Jones movies besides Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I felt like there was a lot of like little references to Temple of Doom in Arms of Gold, where everything from like starting off in New Delhi, where Indy purchases the statue of Shiva, to like there's even a spike trap at one point. Did Temple of Doom have any influence on this story, at least visually, or?
No, when did Temple of Doom come out?
84.
84. Yep.
No, again, it might have been unconscious, but not on purpose.
Where'd the llama come from?
Well, it was, again, Mal Warwick, the guy I was living with at the time, had lots of llama stories.
Oh boy! Hey, this is a child-friendly podcast here.
Not just one llama story. He had multiple llamas.
Yes.
Let's keep it clean here. Come on.
He's, and I won't share most all of them with you because.
Apparently he hunkered down with a llama some night to keep. Apparently a llama kept him warm one night because it certainly worked out for Indiana Jones. And Keith and I love the fact that the ending is very close to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 14 years earlier. So you figured it out. You were prescient or whatever it would be.
Whatever.
Yeah, let's go into the letter page on Arms of Gold, issue 3. One of the readers said, "Well, hey, what I like a lot in this story is Professor Francisca, who is smart, beautiful Latina. She makes things happen like in real life with Latina women. I guess that she has adventures herself. She's so smart. I didn't know that the Incas had mummies. Is there a book on this?
Right.
I want to ask, did the pharaohs learn this from the Incas? My brother says so, but I never heard it before." That was from Elena Martin back in the day. So, I don't know, can you... It says, Lee Mars did a terrific amount of research for the series. If you're interested, check your local library. Well, we're checking with Lee. You're our local library.
Source.
Did the Incas have mummies?
Yes. I got this from National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So they at the time had unearthed some of these mummies. They were part of sacrifices to the gods. Okay. They were mostly children or preteens, and they were buried on mountaintops.
There you go. There's 30 years later, we get 30 years later, we get the answer.
Another
What'd you think of
mystery.
the books? How they came out? Arms of Gold. Did you get it all through?
Yeah, I really liked Russell Walk's work. He did such a good job, and so I really liked Arms of Gold, how it turned out, and it was one of my favorite things that I ever worked on, actually.
Yeah, and of course, for our listeners, we just want to mention, of course, Russell Walks did the covers to all the covers, which are fantastic, and also have a couple of little references, like to the other Indiana Jones movies. Like issue 1, you could definitely see the Last Crusade reference with Indy and Elsa, what looks to be Indy and Elsa on the cover. Those are fantastic covers.
So as we mentioned, one of our favorite adventures, Arms of Gold. We got to talk about Iron Phoenix.
Okie doke.
Okay. Keith and I may have been a little bit harder on this one when we initially reviewed it than we should have been. I think we should probably, and we want to get your input on this. This was a video game, right? Like a failed video game?
They were designing the video game.
Yeah.
As the book, as I was writing the book.
This was supposed to be included with the game, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, originally.
Yes. And
because I had worked in games as well, so I could understand their frustration.
Mm-hmm.
They originally had a perfectly reasonable game that all took place in Ireland, and then suddenly I got a call a couple of weeks later, and it was going to be in Berlin in Ireland. And then a couple of weeks later, it was a nightmare. So that's one reason that it's a clunky story.
Okay.
Because it had to include these certain things.
I love this quote from you in an interview, though. You said, because you basically just said what you just said, but then you said, then I'd have to change everything around. But I put a 10% contingency fee on that, so at least they paid for the indecision.
Yes.
Nice.
I
That's my favorite part of Iron Phoenix, is that you guys paid for their insanity.
Right.
Good for you.
It was such a nightmare.
Okay.
Also, it seemed like there was a clash between drawing styles, from what we've heard as well, between the characters, which were drawn more in an Art Deco style, and like the background per se, which were a bit more realistic. Was that anything that?
Well, what I found out as I began to see the artwork was that Leo was doing the figures and some assistant was doing the backgrounds.
Okay.
Yep. And so I jumped up and down, and so he changed the assistants, whatever assistant. He found somebody else better. And so that's why a lot of the erraticness occurred.
Yeah. You definitely get a feel that there was some type of major clash. So
flipping around the locations, that's obviously a huge challenge because you're trying to keep up. Again, like Indiana Jones, you're making it up as you go. But it almost seems like, and correct us if we're wrong on this, but it seems like it's coming at you in a video game script where, okay, Indy's got to get this piece for the Philosopher's Stone, then he's got to get this piece, then he's got. So it's almost like you're walking through a game, but video games don't really give us character development or humor or different things like that. Was that how it was pieced out to you, and was that how much of a challenge for you was that as the writer of the tale, or adapting the tale? Let's put it that way.
Well, about halfway through this process, I kind of put my foot down and said that there should be no more changes. Whatever happened with the game, and people would understand because comics are not exactly games. And if there were enough elements, and I figured by this time we had enough elements that related to the game, that would be good enough. and Ryder Wyndham, who was, I think there were like 10 editors or something on this.
There's a ton of people on the book, yeah.
It was like, what?
Yeah.
But the only person that I actually dealt with and talked with was Ryder. And so he heard the frustration in my voice and okayed this. But
yeah,
it was a mess.
Joe Penny, Hal Barwood, Bill Stoneham, Arik Wilmander from LucasArts Story, and then I guess they just gave you this thing and said, "Can you make 4 comic books out of it?"
Out of this, yes.
Yeah. So I think going back, I kind of look at this and go, you know what? When you look at it from that perspective, and Keith and I mentioned this, it's like it's such a different format than what you typically do, right? Like when you approached Arms of Gold, you approached that completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Did this sour you on LucasArts or Lucasfilm or the character of Indiana Jones afterwards?
No. I would have done Indiana Jones until I keeled over and died. They were planning to continue the Indiana Jones movies with River Phoenix as the younger Indiana Jones. And so I was going to continue to write Indiana Jones.
Would you have done younger Indiana Jones? Would you have done the River Phoenix version?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I saw you mention that in an interview, and I couldn't wrap my brain around because this was something I was unfamiliar with. Had they mentioned that they were planning to do with River Phoenix as young Indiana Jones, or they were bringing him in as the older?
No, however old he was,
right.
That was where they were gonna.
But feature films, not a TV series.
The feature films. Oh yeah, not a TV series.
Wow.
No.
So you actually
films.
got that from people at Lucasfilm?
Yes.
Wow.
And Dark Horse as well.
Okay.
Because Dark Horse wanted to gear up, considering comic book scheduling.
Yeah.
Wanted to
adaptations, of course. Yeah.
So there was a thought at the time to have Indiana Jones 4 starring River Phoenix.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I don't think we've known that before.
No, I think we knew that there was going to be. They wanted River to continue the character somehow. But we weren't quite sure if it was just going to be for the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah, and it became Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Right, exactly.
Maybe because he had passed, it became the TV. That's interesting.
That's all news to me. All news to me. Very interesting.
And
they were feature films.
Wow.
It's too bad. I mean, River's short appearance in the movie at the time was really great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, perfect.
Perfect casting, etc.
Him learning the mannerisms of Harrison Ford on set of Mosquito Coast was spot on. I mean, he was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we do have some cool things in here. I know it, like you said, I think, how'd you describe it? A mess overall.
That's a technical term, but I'm sure you can understand.
Well, I think we need to go back and review it in that context because it's like, anyway, but there are some cool things in here. So you got the Philosopher's Stone. They talk about, everybody talks about bringing Hitler back to life. Zombie Nazis. But I think you couldn't call things Hitler or Nazis in this, right? Because it was going to be a game for kids.
Well, but also too, don't forget. I mean, as a person that lives in Austria, there are laws in Germany and Austria where you cannot release certain things with swastikas or even certain references to even bringing Hitler back to life. You cannot do that.
So that kind of neutered the story a little bit too, didn't it?
Yes.
All right. But you get to write for Zombie Nazis, kind of.
Yeah.
And we got a bunch of great Dave Dorman art for the covers as well. Those are some great covers.
What's your favorite part about? Right, I know Arms of Gold is like, let's put that one up there, and it well, deservedly so. And Iron Phoenix is like, cool, you got to do Indy again. But what's your favorite memories about Iron Phoenix? Besides the craziness and getting an extra 10% of everything.
And would you redo it in your way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I if I had a chance, I would definitely redo it in my way.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the Russian, the lady Russian soldier.
Yeah.
I liked her interchanges and stuff with Indy.
Misha, you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like years before Crystal Skull again. So you
years
get to bring
before
the Russians
Spalko,
in.
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I should have gotten something for all of this info that
get on the horn to your attorney. You might have some retroactive residuals coming at you for this. No, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Is that it's that character development that I think this one is missing. That spurs a book on where it does feel video gamey, but looked at it from that perspective, if I've got my LucasArts video game over here and I got this little comic book that's in with it, okay, maybe, I could see that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, because of the leaping around, just what you said, there other than Indy, there isn't any character who goes through the entire 4 issues.
Right.
So
that kills it.
Yeah, and this is how fiction hopefully resembles real life. When you meet somebody, you need to spend some time before the different aspects of their personality emerge. And so this wasn't possible.
Which is exactly what happens in Arms of Gold, because he gets to spend so much time with Franziska, and then we see it's completely different by the end of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad that Iron Phoenix was only a 4-issue series. I think it should have been a 6 or even an 8-issue series of it. Again, it's something we've talked about without end on this segment of the IndyCast, is that some of these stories you just needed time to breathe and just need a little bit more time to develop some of these characters, because there are some great characters in this story. We just needed to get to know them a little bit better.
Yeah,
or hate them, or love them, or whatever. Just more time with them.
Yeah, you sort of visit these characters, but you don't get to know them.
Yeah, and I think to your point too of it bouncing around. Oh, it's in Germany. Oh, it's over here. It's over. I think even when we were reading the book initially and reviewing it, was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what's going on. I have to keep rereading things, and so I think there was that frustration of us as a reader, channeling your frustrations as the writer, going,
absolutely,
they're doing this to me. I'm trying my best. So, and we know you knocked it out of the park with Arms of Gold. So I think that's why I'm going to be kinder to Iron Phoenix, I think, moving forward. Now that we've talked about it.
So what you need to do is you need to rewrite it. Okay, we'll make it into like a nice radio drama with effects and all kinds of music and stuff, and then we'll put out your version. We'll re-review it, and then have you back on the show to talk about how great it was to go through this experience this time.
I think she's going to charge us 10%.
It's a deal. It's a deal.
I think she's going to charge us 10% of her day rate, which I don't think I can afford. What are you working on now? Talk about your day rate. What are you working on now? What's going on? Are you retired and enjoying retirement?
No. Well, I have retired from my regular job. I was multimedia chair for Berkeley City College for 10 years.
Okay.
And this gave me something to retire from. And so the comics work immediately picked up right after that. I've been working on a lot of longer stories. I did a digital series for Aces Weekly. Are y'all familiar with that?
No. How do we find this?
It's online. David Lloyd of V for Vendetta fame started up Aces Weekly, which provides, it's digital, it provides about 6 or 7 stories every week for 7 weeks. It's called Sandra of the Secret Service. Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, wow.
It's a a comic strip that Colonel Nicholson, the creator of DC Comics, wrote in the 1930s. His granddaughter approached me at the San Diego Comic-Con with this idea of doing this series. So she had never written a story before, a comic story.
Okay.
And so she went to comics writing school online. We were doing this during the pandemic, so it was great.
Oh, okay.
And so she did up a very good story, and then I adjusted, and then she rewrote it, and so forth.
Okay, so is this contemporary, brought up to contemporary, or is it set in the 30s?
No. It's definitely in the 30s.
Oh, nice.
And so it's in Cuba, and it's pretty cool. So I've also done a story called Got Over It for Drawing Power, edited by Diane Newman, that came out a few years ago. That got an Eisner.
Nice.
Best anthology. That's
Nice.
right.
Yes, and I did a story called Food for Thought that's going to be published in the spring. Again, it's another anthology about climate change, all the different sorts of subject matter there. So I've been really busy.
You have been busy. You needed to retire so you could get all this work done. Man, well, how do we find out about? Oh, go ahead.
At my website, most of them are
that's what
listed at my website.
Yeah, how do we? Where do we go to find out about all this?
It's at leemars.com.
And 2 R's.
Yes.
leemars.com. So everything's out there. And then, if you're going to be doing another new Indiana Jones movie, maybe they'll have more comic books. Maybe you can you get in and redo Iron Phoenix on the back end of this. Would you want to do another Indiana Jones tale?
Sure.
All right. My goodness, Lee, thank you so much for bringing us these tales of Indiana Jones and for taking the time to talk about them with us today on the IndyCast. We truly appreciate that.
Well, thank y'all for your interest.
All right, well, there you have it, IndyCast listeners. A deep dive into 2 Indy tales with Lee Mars. Keith, what'd you think? We got a little bit more perspective on
a
Iron
little bit
Phoenix.
more perspective, a little bit more insight, and who knows, maybe we will have a redo of Iron Phoenix, right?
Well, Lee was critical of it. I mean, she called it a
it clears things up a little bit. I mean, you definitely see, and as we mentioned in the interview, it definitely would have benefited from having a little bit more character development, maybe a couple more issues. If the game was actually even finished, it just sounded like it was just unfortunately a mess. But yeah,
it was a weird time, wasn't it?
We could do a redo. Why not? Right? Maybe. I mean, all the elements are there. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm open for it.
It was such a weird time for Lucasfilm and LucasArts, and there were abandoned projects and all these different things going.
Maybe they bit off more they can chew, actually, too. You know what I mean?
That's possible.
Maybe they wanted to get so much indie stuff out there. Yeah. Maybe they didn't realize how much time they had left for the character. Strike while the iron's hot, right?
Yeah, that's true. But did we break some news, though, today? I
think we did. The River Phoenix.
Write in, IndyCast listeners, and tell us, because I don't remember ever talking about this. I remember, and again, I'd have to go back in that time period, but I know they were, it bounced into the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, but was the original thought to have movies set in the 40s, with River Phoenix at that. I don't know. That would have been very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. We're going to have to do some digging on this, but IndyCast listeners, that's your job. Go do. We're dealing with the comic book stuff.
Let us know.
Let us know. Right to it. Hey, how can they, if they, all those listeners out there are furiously Googling right now, or it's probably in one of my 1,000 books that I'm looking at from Indiana Jones. If they find out and want to clear some things up for us about that, or anything, if they want to talk about anything, well, how can they get a hold of us?
I mean, it's super easy. I mean, most of you guys have done it already. You email us at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com, and don't forget to comment or message us on our Facebook page. We want to hear from you guys.
Okay, that's it for the day then.
Okay, kids, that is all the time we have for today. Indy's out of here. I'm out of here. Keith's out of here. We've got to go read another Dark Horse Indy tale, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm already hitting my long box. You guys should do the same.
Yeah.
Grab your individual issues. I'm going to flip through my omnibus because, that's all I have space for here. We're going to revisit Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny because next time we get together in the Raven's Nest, we're going to sit down with writer Elaine Lee.
Oh, another incredible storyteller joins us, this time to talk about the 1995 4-part series from Dark Horse.
Look, we got Ireland, the UK, a religious artifact, Henry Jones Sr.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have the adventure of your life keeping up with the Joneses. Next time on the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.